I think the overall construction industry, there's a lot of inertia, right? There's a lot of resistance to doing something new because, well, let's just they're comfortable, right? They want to do everything that they already know, just keep doing it. There's a mentality of if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I think for me, because I started off as more of an outsider looking in, and I'm looking at this and it's like, well, I think the system is kind of broken. It's just from the inside, it's hard to see, but from the outside, there's a lot of places where I think that there's room for improvement.
Hi, David. Welcome to the Steel Framing Connections podcast. Do you want to just introduce yourself and your role and a bit about Orlando Steel Framing?
My name is David Chai. I am co-owner and CEO of Orlando Steel Framing. We are a steel framing manufacturer located in Central Florida. We specialize in pretty much anything that you could possibly need for multifamily or, you know, townhomes or, commercial, um, light gauge steel framing.
Nice. Do you guys just service the Florida region, or are you a bit wider than that?
So we started off mostly in the Florida region. We have a second site in California in the city of Industry. This was started last year, and the interest there is to start promoting steel as a non-combustible building material, especially in Florida or in California with all the fires, to really push for more resilient and help with the building and help with the reconstruction effort out there.
And what sort of projects are you doing, and are you doing them for yourself, or who are your customers? Who are you serving?
So currently, we are focused, or our current projects, we have a few in Florida, working on multifamily in the Miami area. We have our own projects as well. We have a 139 townhome project that we should start going vertical next month. We have also in the permitting process a multifamily apartment building. It's also our own project, and that's going to be 123 units.
And where does cold form steel sit inside Florida market in terms of adoption?
We're seeing more interest, I think. The challenge with cold form steel is partially getting recognition and education. We need to sort of push not so much the builders, but I think the real targets are the end users, the architects, and the engineering firms. We found one of the big challenges is engineering, because the the structural engineering is really a big part of the process as a whole. It's really the crux of everything. Everything kind of comes after that and is determined by that. And so having structural engineers who really understand the system is that we found paramount to, making sure projects move smoothly. Because when you have the bulk of the engineers in Florida, I think they focus mostly on, say, concrete block, tilt up, wood framing, or heavy steel. And those are maybe the more traditional building materials in the United States. And so really educating them on, hey, there's other options, and there's some real advantages to looking at exploring newer materials, and not really a newer material, but an alternate to what they may be used to, kind of pushing their comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, what do you guys do in that space to kind of educate these engineers? Um, yeah, how does Orlando Steel Framing handle that?
So really right now what we're trying to do is try to align with more engineers who really understand. I think the education is a longer term goal, but in the short term, what we're trying to do is sort of filter through the engineers who do understand cold form steel, and then we can then use that sort of list of, I don't want to say approved engineers, but you know, these we can give recommendations to our clients. So when they come and they say, "Hey, I have a project. It's here's the architectural. Maybe they already have structural. We can either say, "Hey, you may want to revise some of this because it's really not very well optimized for our system." Or even better, if they don't have a structural engineer, then we can kind of point them in the direction. These engineers can really help you out. They understand the system, and they'll take good care of you.
So are you getting people that they have a development they want to do, and then like ideally you talk to them before they've done the engineering and promote cold form steel, or are they coming to you saying, I want cold form steel? Like whereabouts are they at in terms of their material choice normally?
So we found sort of a mix. We found there some potential clients who, yeah, they're maybe 90% of the way through the process, right? And unfortunately, the engineering was designed with, say, lumber, timber in mind, and so we have to kind of tell them, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to redesign this with cold form steel because it's not a direct, say, apples to apples comparison or translation. The process or the projects that are designed with framing in mind are easier to translate over than, say, something that called for red steel or block. Um, but we found that also some of with a little bit of education, then we've been able to convince some of the potential clients to then take a step back and say, okay, let let's delay this a little bit longer, and let's explore the advantages of using cold form steel instead of what we originally had designed.
When I visited you guys, one key thing I saw was that manufacturing mindset. I think you guys have always been in manufacturing, and Orlando Steel Framing is kind of your move into construction. How important is that manufacturing mindset to how your team deliver projects?
It's actually the fundamental, like, that's really important because um, ultimately the FrameCAD system is best suited for repeat projects, right? Something that you design once, maybe make minimal modifications, but the goal is to repeat after multiple times after that, right? And so if you're doing a mass production process like that, then really the manufacturing mindset kind of supersedes the construction mindset a little bit. Not entirely, because you do have to be mindful of how the construction process goes, right? But at the same time, your goals in manufacturing is to be able to deliver a consistent result over and over and over again, right? It's anyone can put in a lot of effort to make one perfect thing, but if you need to make thousands, millions, then making sure every one of those is the same is going to be a lot more challenging and require a lot more of a manufacturing mindset as opposed to a construction. Well, we'll just fix it if it's a little off.
Yeah, is that a bit of education you need to do as well? Just kind of educating on offsite construction rather than kind of the traditional on-site, we'll fix it on-site. Is that a bit of education as well? And is there some objections that you hear to that?
I think that once you kind of explain the process to the contractors, they, once they understand it, then it all kind of makes sense, right? A good example, we have a apartment complex that we're building in Miami, and they have a very narrow space, right? They don't have a lot of staging area. And so we've been working with them to really label very clearly where the panel packs go, really work with them on this is the sequence that we want to build so that it makes more sense moving from the inside out. And that way, they can better utilize their space and make sure that the workflow is works out better for them. And it for us in the factory, we take then extra care in making sure that all the packs are assembled and prepared in the order that they will be erected, and then everything's color coded and ready to go for them. So it's a team effort with the field and the factory, but the feedback is very important, and the communication between what the customer would like and what we are able to provide.
Yeah, because I guess you need to know the on-site challenges, or there's probably things you guys can fix in the design stage that means that they don't have to do something on site. So I imagine those are kind of the benefits that you could deliver.
Yes, yes. There's always challenges also when you sort of mix materials. I think sometimes we do have sort of hybrid construction where maybe the exterior walls are in block, and then the internal are framed. And so because block is less precise than we would like, and because the FRAMECAD system offers a very high level of precision, sometimes what that involves is saying, okay, well, as we go up with each floor, let's take the measurement as built, and then if we need to make adjustments, let's make those adjustments before it's produced so that we can make sure that the dimensions line up. And we actually had a project where we had a unfortunate, I guess you say, proof of this, why this is important. So, the exterior walls are block, and the first floor, we took out all the measurements as built, made the adjustments, everything fit. Second floor, everything fit. And then there was an interest in sort of speeding up the process. And so they told us, well, just use the second floor measurements for the third floor. And unfortunately, when we went up to the third floor, well, they didn't line up quite right. And the problem was, yeah, the trusses were made to specification. They were made to the specification of the floor below, and well, the walls aren't perfectly straight. So that required some additional modifications in the field, which is less than ideal. But
Mhm.
that this is also a learning process for the contractors, for the developers, and really trying to get them to lean on our expertise and um, explain the process so that everything can move much smoother.
How important is technology to your manufacturing process?
Um, well, very, I would say. This is the whole process is design driven, really, right? And the goal is to minimize waste, minimize having to do repairs or fixes in the field. So the goal really is to design everything in CAD, and really ensure that everything is done properly before anything gets produced, right? Because if it's still just a digital file, pixels don't cost anything. We can redesign, we can make adjustments. Sometimes just having an extra set of eyes. Hey, does this look right? And I think there's more and more push towards that, right? There's with BIM and all the modeling and rendering that like Revit and other software offers, and even with like virtual reality and things like that. I think there's more and more a push towards the, hey, let's do this in software first. Make sure everything looks good before we hit play or hit go, so that we can minimize waste and do this more efficiently.
Is uh, is metrics a big part of your business? And you've talked about waste a lot and doing things efficiently. Is that something that you guys, being previous manufacturers and having that mindset, that you guys keep an eye on?
Yes, yes. You want to minimize waste as much as possible, and in particular because for us here, everything is made uh, to design, right? And also, I guess one of the advantages also for working in CFS is steel is a recyclable material. So anything that is, say, a punch out or a scrap piece, we can either repurpose it for shipping or for say bracing material for the installation packages, or if it's really something that is no longer usable, or maybe it's too small or something, we can then recycle it, and hopefully, one of the new coils that we buy one day will be using that recycled material.
And what about labor? I know, like construction labor and construction is always a big issue, and finding skilled workers. Is there anything you guys do differently in that space?
So I think for the on the assembly side, it's moving people from outside in. I think that the controlled environment helps a lot. The learning curve, I think, on the for the assembly is not so steep, and we have a lot of experienced leaders who can go through that process with new employees. But also because the process, it's kind of like everything has a manual that tells you this piece goes here, this piece goes here. So that makes the assembly a lot simpler than, say, doing something in the field and you need someone with maybe a lot more experience to say, okay, this needs to go together in this way, otherwise it's going to be a nightmare to put together. But with the factory environment and with everything produced in a sequence that makes sense for the assembly, and then everything sort of pre-staged for them, I think that adds to a lot of efficiency, and also it expands your pool for your workforce. And then also, I think when we moved to our new factory is fully air conditioned. So uh, being from Florida, it's quite hot outside. So I think when we move over there, and then really pulling a lot of this work that traditionally is done outside in the Florida heat and bringing it into an air conditioned environment, I think that will also be very attractive, and add to worker efficiency and
Yeah,
happiness, I think.
yeah, I'm sure. What do you think the industry could do to move more people away from these traditional timber builds or block builds towards cold form steel?
I think there's a lot of sort of natural factors that are already kind of pushing the industry in this direction. Um, I think that really reaching out to the people who are going to be the end users, really getting that information out there, raising awareness. We're in Florida. Hurricanes are a big deal. In California, fires are a big deal. Fires are a big deal everywhere. You know, but I think that especially in the southern U.S., you have other challenges, say like with termites, the moisture in Florida, and just all these external challenges that really add a lot to the cost of ownership long term. Everyone talks about the housing crisis. There's not enough supply. And there's a lot of proposals as to what may be the best solutions. I think from my standpoint, and I'm not a traditional builder, right? But I think that, your hard costs from your materials, there's not a lot of room there necessarily, right? The materials are going to cost what they cost. So if you can gain efficiencies either in the time of erection, um, reducing your waste, and then also really, I think the big thing is the long-term costs of ownership, really the soft costs, cost to insure, because the state of Florida has had a lot of issues with in being able to get affordable homeowners insurance. I think that is also the case probably in California. And natural disasters are expensive. So if you can build something that's a lot more resilient and a lot better equipped to withstand those, then that's going to reduce those costs. Just, but yeah, I think building better, building stronger, building more efficiently, and efficiently, even say energy efficiently, right? Just do a better job. Like I think the overall construction industry, there's a lot of inertia, right? There's a lot of resistance to doing something new because, well, let's just they're comfortable, right? They want to do everything that they already know, just keep doing it. There's a mentality of if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I think for me, because really, I started off as more of an outsider looking in, and I'm looking at this and it's like, well, I think the system is kind of broken. It's just from the inside, it's hard to see, but from the outside, there's a lot of places where I think that there's room for improvement. And yeah, I think that as awareness grows, this is coming. Sooner or later, this train has left the station and it's going to pick up speed. And we're optimistic that we're going to be well positioned to meet those demands.
What do the next couple of years look like for Orlando Steel Framing? Like, what are your plans?
So, um, again, we're planning on when we finally move into our new facility. You know, we currently have 7 FrameCAD machines in our Florida facility. We have one currently in Dallas that I haven't decided whether it will stay in Dallas or maybe it'll move to either California or back to Orlando. Um, I think there's going to be some interest maybe also in expanding California in the near future. But yeah, like I said, the industry I think is starting to take notice, and we're already looking at a lot of new projects that are already specced out in CFS, and so that's good, right? I think that's a very good sign that there's starting to be a change in what the market is demanding, right? They can only tolerate so many rebuilds before someone has to say, hey, let's just build something that doesn't need to be rebuilt. Actually, recently I was told by one of our allies, he's doing a lot of projects in the Bahamas, and one of the projects he was doing, he's building fire resistant, non-combustible buildings, and so everything that he's built is standing after a different part of that development just experienced a large fire. So he told me he was looking at a picture where there's this sort of what I think it was a clubhouse or something. It was built out of wood, and they had a fire, and so now you have this smoldering pile of ashes where it once was, and right behind it are all the buildings built in CFS and magnesium oxide boards and fully non-combustible, and they're standing there completely untouched.
Crazy. Insurance companies, you've already mentioned it a little bit, but is that translating into cost savings from insurance companies now? Like, do you see that on the ground?
I think there is some interest. We have not probably done as much as we need to really push that. I think in our own projects, we've definitely seen some interest in. It's like, okay, you guys are building out of non-combustible materials, and so we're willing to give you a more a lower premium on your builder's risk. And I think long term, that's going to be the trend. I think part of that is, like I said, it's education, right? It's letting the insurance companies know that there are other options, and these options are going to be a much safer bet against your traditional loss leaders of fire, termites, wind in Florida, or seismic in California, or what have you. And so because the risk to you as an insurance company is much lower, than you can try to find a middle ground where, sure, they're looking to maximize their premiums, but you can only charge what people are willing to pay. And so, hey, if you come down a little bit, we understand you need to earn your insurance premium, but also recognize that, hey, it's a lower risk, so give some of that benefit back, right? Yeah, I think that's just going to also be a matter of time. Insurance companies are also traditionally very conservative and risk averse. So, but I think presenting enough evidence to show them, hey, this is the right way forward. I think moving forward, more resilient materials is going to be the way to go.
Great. Well, I think we can end on that. So thank you so much, David, for jumping on the podcast.
Thank you.
We'll see everyone in the next one. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Steel Framing Connections. If today's conversation sparked a new idea, share it with your team and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. To explore the technology, people and projects shaping the future of steel framing, visit FRAMECAD.com. Let's reframe how you think about building.